The bright lights of the Galactic Council chamber hurt Jack Morrison's eyes. He was still getting used to the different types of lighting preferred by the various alien species. As the first human ambassador to the Council, everything was new to him. Most aliens viewed humans as weak newcomers who had just figured out how to travel between stars. Jack straightened his blue uniform and walked toward his small desk at the far edge of the chamber. The important species sat in the center. Humans, being the newest members, got the worst seats. Jack didn't mind. From here he could watch everyone without being noticed. The council meeting began as it always did, with the elder speaking. The elder belonged to the Araxian species, tall, blue-skinned beings with 4 arms and eyes that could see in all directions. "We gather again under shadow of fear," the elder said, her voice translator making her sound almost musical. 3. More worlds report Vorax attacks this cycle. The settlement on Proxima Delta is gone. No survivors. A heavy silence fell over the room. Jack had learned quickly that nothing frightened the galaxy more than the Vorax. Even the most powerful military species grew quiet at their mention. "What defenses failed this time?" asked a representative from the warrior Krell species. "All of them," replied the elder. "As always." Jack listened carefully. In his 3 months as ambassador, he had heard many discussions about the Vorax, but knew little about them. The council species seemed too afraid to even study their enemy properly. While the others argued about increasing patrols and building bigger weapons, Jack quietly accessed the council database from his desk terminal. The files on Vorax were surprisingly small given how feared they were. The images showed massive reptilian creatures with iridescent scales that shimmered between black and deep purple. They stood nearly 9 feet tall with powerful limbs and multiple rows of teeth. Their ships were equally fearsome, living vessels that seemed part biological, part mechanical. But something in the attack patterns caught Jack's attention. He pulled up a star chart and mapped all known Vorax attacks for the past 50 years. A pattern emerged that nobody had mentioned. The Vorax never attacked the same world twice. They never completely destroyed infrastructure, and they always left a few survivors. These weren't the actions of mindless killers. This was something else, something with purpose. When the meeting ended, Jack approached the elder. Other representatives quickly moved away, heading to their own chambers. "Elder Zira, may I have a moment?" Jack asked, bowing slightly as was Araxian custom. "Ambassador Morrison, of course. How may I assist Earth's representative?" Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "I've been studying the Vorax attack patterns," Jack said. "Has anyone ever attempted communication with them?" The elder's blue skin paled slightly. "Communication? With Vorax? They do not communicate, Ambassador. They hunt, they kill, they vanish. That is all they have done for 10,000 years. But the patterns suggest intelligence, purpose. Maybe we've misunderstood." "There is nothing to misunderstand," the elder interrupted, her translator unable to hide the sharpness in her voice. "The mistake of thinking the Vorax can be reasoned with has been made before. Those who attempted it are dead." Jack pressed on. "I would like to request permission to establish a diplomatic mission to Vorax territory." The chamber, which had been quietly emptying, suddenly went silent. Every alien turned to stare at the human. "Denied," the elder said firmly. "Such a mission would be suicide and could provoke further attacks. The council forbids it." "With respect, Elder," Jack said. "Doing the same thing over and over while expecting different results isn't working. We need a new approach." "The human does not understand," said a Krell warrior stepping forward. His gray stone-like skin was covered in battle scars. "I have fought the Vorax. I have seen them tear apart a cruiser with their bare hands. They do not talk. They do not negotiate. They hunt." Jack nodded respectfully to the warrior. "Maybe that's exactly why no one has succeeded. Everyone either fights or runs. Has anyone ever just stood their ground peacefully?" The council chamber erupted in dismissive noises and sounds of disbelief. "Your species is young," the elder said, not unkindly. "You will learn. The council's decision is final." Jack returned to his quarters that evening, frustrated but not surprised. The embassy Earth had been given was small, just 3 rooms in the lower levels of the massive council station. His assistant, an AI named Dana, greeted him as he entered. "You look troubled, Ambassador," the AI said, its hologram flickering to life. "The council is too afraid to try something new," Jack said, throwing his uniform jacket onto a chair. "The Voraks have them paralyzed." "The fear is understandable given the historical data," Dana replied. Jack pulled up his star map again with all the Voraks attack points marked. "Look at this, Dana. These aren't random attacks. There's a pattern here. Almost like they're testing each species." "Testing? For what purpose?" "I don't know," Jack admitted. "But I intend to find out." 2 days later, Jack entered a less reputable section of the council station. Here, away from the official chambers, beings from across the galaxy conducted the kind of business the council pretended didn't exist. Jack found what he was looking for in a dim bar where the air was thick with various alien intoxicants. Olivia Grant sat alone at a table, drinking something that glowed faintly green. Her pilot's jacket was worn, and the insignia of at least 3 different freight companies had been sewn onto it and later removed. "Captain Grant?" Jack asked, sitting down across from her. She looked up, her expression guarded. "Ambassador, slumming it today? I need a ship and a pilot willing to go where the council won't approve," Jack said, keeping his voice low. Olivia laughed. "And they say humans aren't interesting." She took another drink. "Where exactly is this forbidden destination?" "The edge of Vorax territory." The glass stopped halfway to her lips. She set it down carefully. "You're either crazy or suicidal. Neither makes for a good client." "I'm neither," Jack said. "I'm curious, and I'm willing to pay triple your usual rate." "No amount of money helps you spend it if you're dead," Olivia replied. But Jack could see she was considering it. "I think everyone's been approaching the Voraks wrong," Jack explained. "What if they're not just mindless killers? What if there's something we're all missing?" Olivia studied him for a long moment. "Say I was stupid enough to take you. What exactly would we do once we reach Vorax space? Wave hello and hope they don't eat us?" "Something like that?" Jack smiled. "Sometimes the bravest thing isn't to fight or run. Sometimes it's just to stand your ground and try to understand. And people call pilots crazy," Olivia muttered. But she held out her hand. "Triple rate paid half in advance. And when this goes wrong, not if, when, I reserve the right to say, 'I told you so' before we die." Jack shook her hand. "Deal." As they left the bar, neither noticed the council security officer watching from the shadows, already sending an urgent message to Elder Zira about the human ambassador's unauthorized plan. Olivia's ship, the Drifter, was small but fast. It had once been a luxury vessel before being converted for less official purposes. Jack sat in the co-pilot seat as Olivia prepared for launch from the lower docks of the council station. "Last chance to change your mind," Olivia said, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "Once we leave council space, no one will come to rescue us." Jack checked the small bag he had packed. It contained basic supplies, his translator device, and several items he hoped might serve as peace offerings. "I'm certain," he replied. "The council has spent thousands of years running or fighting. Neither has worked." The ship's engines hummed to life. Olivia received clearance for departure, having filed a false flight plan claiming they were headed to a trading post in the opposite direction from Vorax territory. As they pulled away from the station, Jack's communicator buzzed. The stern face of Elder Zira appeared on the small screen. "Ambassador Morrison," she said, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly in what Jack had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "Council security has informed me of your plan. You are ordered to return immediately." "I'm sorry, Elder," Jack replied, "but sometimes we need to try new approaches." "This is not diplomacy, this is suicide," the Elder insisted. "The Council officially withdraws all support for your mission. If you proceed, you do so as an individual, not as Earth's representative." "I understand," Jack said simply. "You clearly do not." The Elder's voice grew softer. "The Voraks have destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. They cannot be reasoned with." "With respect, Elder, how do we know if we've never truly tried?" The Elder was silent for a moment. May whatever gods you believe in protect you, human. The connection ended. Olivia glanced at Jack. Well, that sounded final. Still want to proceed? Jack nodded. Set course for the border of the hunting grounds. 3 days later, the drifter slowed as it approached the invisible line that marked the beginning of what most species called the Vorax hunting grounds. No official border existed, just the point where most ships refused to go any further. Sensors aren't picking up anything unusual, Olivia reported, checking her instruments. But Vorax ships don't always show up on scans. They have some kind of living cloaking technology. Jack looked out at the stars. They looked the same as everywhere else in space, yet this region inspired terror throughout the galaxy. How far should we go in? Olivia asked. Far enough to be noticed, but not so far that we can't retreat quickly if needed, Jack replied. Olivia guided the ship forward. Hours passed with nothing happening. They took turns watching the sensors while the other slept. Jack used the time to review everything known about Vorax communication. The files were disappointing, mostly recordings of roars and clicking sounds that no one had bothered to analyze for patterns. On the second day in Vorax space, all the ship's systems suddenly flickered. What was that? Jack asked, sitting up straight. Olivia's hands flew across the controls. Power surge. But our systems are fine. Her voice trailed off as she looked at the main viewport. A massive shape was materializing in front of them. The Vorax ship was at least 20 times larger than the drifter. It resembled a giant predatory fish, with sections that appeared to be living tissue blended seamlessly with metal. Pulses of purple energy rippled along its surface. We need to run, Olivia said, her voice tense as she prepared to turn the ship. No, Jack placed his hand on hers, stopping her. That's what everyone always does. We need to try something different. Are you insane? Olivia stared at him. That's a Vorax hunter ship. They'll tear us apart. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have fired already, Jack pointed out. They're curious, let's use that. Before Olivia could argue further, a beam of purple light engulfed their ship. The engines shut down completely. They've got us. In some kind of tractor beam, Olivia said, frantically trying to restart the engines. We're being pulled in. Jack took a deep breath. Let it happen. You really are crazy, Olivia muttered, but she stopped fighting the controls. What's your plan now, Ambassador? We wait, Jack said, trying to sound calmer than he felt. And then we try to talk. The drifter was pulled into a massive opening on the side of the Vorax vessel. They found themselves in a cavernous docking bay that seemed partly mechanical, partly organic. The walls pulsed with the same purple energy they had seen outside. Their ship is alive, Jack whispered in awe. A heavy thudding sound came from outside. Their airlock. Something was approaching. They'll need to force their way in, Olivia said, reaching for a weapon under her seat. No, Jack said firmly. No weapons. He moved toward the airlock. I'm going to open it. That's suicide. It's diplomacy, Jack corrected her. The most extreme kind. Before Olivia could stop him, Jack pressed the airlock release. The door hissed open. 3 enormous Vorax stood outside. They were even more intimidating in person than in the images Jack had studied. Nearly 9 feet tall, with muscular bodies covered in iridescent scales that shifted between black and deep purple. Their faces were reptilian, with multiple rows of teeth visible when they opened their mouths. 4 yellow eyes studied the humans with clear intelligence. The lead Vorax stepped forward, towering over Jack. It wore some kind of armor that seemed fused to its scales, with symbols etched into the metal that Jack didn't recognize. It opened its mouth and released a series of clicks and growls. Jack's translator device flashed red, unable to decipher the sounds. The Vorax leaned down, its face inches from Jack's. It sniffed, then made another series of sounds. One clawed hand reached out toward Jack. Olivia, still inside the ship, raised her weapon. No, Jack called to her without turning around. Trust me. Instead of backing away, Jack did something unprecedented in known galactic history. He reached into his bag and pulled out an apple, a simple fruit from Earth. He held it out to the massive predator. The Vorax's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. It stared at the small red object, then at the tiny human, offering it. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, with surprising gentleness, the Vorax took the apple. It examined the fruit carefully before taking a small bite. Its eyes widened slightly. Jack smiled and pointed to himself. "Jack," he said clearly. The Vorax studied him for a long moment. Then it pointed one clawed finger at its own chest and made a sound. A name that Jack couldn't pronounce, but that sounded something like Kraz. Jack repeated the sound as best he could. Kraz. The Vorax, Kraz, made a noise that might have been laughter. It turned to the others and made a series of rapid sounds. Then it looked back at Jack and gestured for him to follow. "What's happening?" Olivia called from inside the ship. "Diplomacy," Jack replied with a smile. "I've been invited to talk." Jack followed Kraz through corridors that seemed to be both living tissue and metal. The walls pulsed with soft purple light. 2 other Vorax walked behind them, keeping their yellow eyes fixed on Jack. "I'm going with him," Olivia called, hurrying to catch up. She had hidden her weapon but kept one hand near where it would be if needed. The Vorax turned their massive heads to look at her. Kraz made a sound that Jack's translator still couldn't understand, but the gesture to join them was clear enough. They were led to a large chamber that Jack guessed was some kind of meeting room. The walls were covered in symbols similar to those on Kraz's armor. In the center was a low table surrounded by seating platforms made from the same strange material as the rest of the ship. Kraz pointed to 2 of the platforms, indicating that Jack and Olivia should sit. They did so cautiously. The material was softer than it looked, almost adjusting to their bodies as they sat down. Olivia leaned close to Jack. "What's the plan now?" she whispered. "We learn," Jack replied quietly. "And we teach." Kraz returned with a device that looked like a small purple orb. The Vorax placed it on the table between them. It began to glow and hover slightly above the surface. "Translator," Kraz said in a rough, deep voice. The word was heavily accented but recognizable. Jack couldn't hide his surprise. "You speak our language? Learn some words," Kraz replied slowly. "Many species, many languages." The orb glowed brighter. "This helped better," Kraz said, the words now coming through the orb in a clearer voice. "We study all species in galaxy. Not speak well, but understand much." Jack leaned forward. All this time the council believed the Vorax couldn't communicate. Kraz made a sound that might have been laughter. "Council fear. Fear makes stupid. You not fear. You different? Why do you attack other species?" Olivia asked bluntly. The translator orb hummed for a moment. Kraz's face changed in a way Jack couldn't read. "Not attack. Challenge," Kraz replied. "This is way of Vorax. Challenge others to find worthy ones." "Challenge?" Jack repeated. "You mean like a test?" "Yes." Kraz's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Strong fight or run smart. Weak die. This is nature. For 10,000 years we search for worthy species to join hunt." "Join the hunt?" Olivia sounded confused. "What does that mean?" "Vorax hunt together. Packs stronger than one. Galaxy full of prey but empty of equals." Kraz's voice through the translator held what sounded like sadness. "Lonely to be strongest." Jack thought carefully about this. "You've been testing species to see if they're strong enough to be your friends?" The orb flickered as it tried to translate Kraz's response. "Not friends. Hunt brothers. Those who stand beside in battle. Those worthy of respect." "But everyone either attacks you or runs away," Jack said, understanding dawning. "So you never found anyone worthy?" "Until small humans stand before Kraz. Not run, not fight, offer food instead." Kraz pointed to Jack. "New thing. Interesting thing." For the next several hours, Jack and Olivia learned about Vorax culture. They were a species built entirely around the concept of the hunt. but not mindless killing. They valued skill, courage, and intelligence. Their society was organized into hunting packs, each with its own territory and traditions. What the council had interpreted as random attacks were actually ritualized challenges. The Vorax would appear at a colony, test its defenses and the courage of its people, then leave, taking few lives compared to what they could have taken. They were looking for species that would neither run in fear nor attack blindly, but stand their ground with dignity. In 10,000 years, no one had done what Jack did, simply stand before them without fear and offer something instead of taking. "Why leave survivors?" Jack asked. "After each attack, you always leave some alive." "How pray learn if all die?" Kraz replied as if the answer was obvious. "Survivors tell story, make others stronger for next challenge." Olivia shook her head in disbelief. "The entire galaxy has been terrified of you for millennia because of a cultural misunderstanding." At that moment, another Vorax entered the chamber. This one was larger than Kraz, with darker scales and deep scars across its face. It wore more elaborate armor with glowing purple symbols. The newcomer looked at the humans with what seemed like disgust and roared at Kraz. The translator orb flickered but couldn't keep up with the rapid speech. Kraz stood and roared back. The chamber filled with the sound of their argument. "What's happening?" Olivia whispered to Jack. "I think we've caused some kind of internal conflict," Jack replied. The large Vorax pointed at the humans and made several threatening gestures. Kraz stood between them and the newcomer, clearly protecting Jack and Olivia. Finally, the orb managed to translate. "Pack leader Vorsk says bringing aliens aboard is shameful," it relayed. "Says Kraz is weak. Must prove worthiness to keep position as huntmaster." Kraz turned to Jack. "Vorsk challenges my right to bring you here. By our law, must answer challenge with combat or lose all honor." Jack stood up. "Then I will answer the challenge for you." Both Vorax stared at him. Olivia grabbed his arm. "Are you insane? He's 3 times your size." "What?" Kraz asked, the translator struggling to convey the confusion. "In human culture," Jack explained, keeping his voice steady, "when someone helps you, you return the favor. You've shown us hospitality, let me stand for you in this challenge." The orb translated his words. Vorsk made a sound that was definitely laughter. Kraz seemed confused but also impressed. "Small human cannot win against Vorsk," Kraz said. "Vorsk, strongest warrior in pack." "Size isn't everything," Jack replied. "Let me show you how humans hunt." After a heated discussion that the translator couldn't fully keep up with, the Vorax agreed to Jack's request. Vorsk seemed particularly amused by the idea of fighting the small human. They were led to a large, circular chamber. Other Vorax gathered around the edges to watch. Olivia was held back by 2 guards, her face pale with worry. "The rules are simple," Kraz explained through the orb. "Circle of challenge. First to yield or be unable to continue loses. No killing." "Understood," Jack said, stretching his muscles. He felt small and fragile in the center of the enormous chamber, facing the massive Vorsk. Vorsk removed his armor, revealing more battle scars across his scaled body. He moved with surprising grace for his size. Jack knew he couldn't match the Vorax in strength or reach. A sound like a deep bell rang through the chamber. The challenge had begun. Vorsk lunged forward with startling speed. Jack rolled to the side, barely avoiding the massive claws. The Vorax was fast, but Jack noticed he had a pattern to his movements. A slight hesitation before striking with his right arm. Jack kept moving, using his smaller size as an advantage. He darted in and out of Vorsk's reach, studying his opponent's reactions. The Vorax became increasingly frustrated, his movements growing more aggressive but less coordinated. When Vorsk made a powerful but overextended lunge, Jack saw his opportunity. He slid under the Vorax's arm and used a fighting technique from Earth, using Vorsk's own momentum and weight against him. To everyone's surprise, the massive Vorax stumbled forward and fell hard onto the chamber floor. Before Vorsk could recover, Jack jumped onto his back and pressed a small knife he had concealed to the base of the Vorax's skull, not hard enough to pierce the tough scales, but enough to make his point. "I yield," Jack said clearly, removing the knife and stepping back. I could have struck, but chose not to. That's also how humans hunt sometimes. We know when enough is enough. The chamber was completely silent. No Vorax had ever seen anything like this before. A tiny alien who could have taken advantage of a fallen opponent but chose to show mercy instead. Vorsk slowly got to his feet. He stared at Jack for a long moment. Then, to everyone's surprise, he made a gesture that Kraz later explained was a sign of respect among Vorax hunters. Small but clever, Vorsk said through the orb. Hunts with mind, not just claws. Interesting prey becomes interesting hunter. That evening, as Jack rested in quarters provided for him and Olivia, Kraz visited them. You have changed things, the Vorax said. No species ever faced challenge this way. Now pack curious about humans, want to learn more. And we want to learn more about Vorax, Jack replied. There's been too much fear between our peoples. Tomorrow we take you to Hunt World, Kraz said. Show you true home of Vorax. Begin to teach each other. After Kraz left, Olivia looked at Jack with newfound respect. You know, when I agreed to this suicide mission, I really thought it would end with us being eaten. Jack smiled. The galaxy's deadliest predators don't want to eat us. They want to be our friends. They just had a very strange way of trying to make that happen. The Council will never believe this, Olivia said. Then we'll have to show them, Jack replied. It's time. The galaxy learned a new way to deal with what it fears. News spread quickly through the Galactic Council. Word that a human ship had entered Vorax territory caused initial panic. When days passed with no sign of their destruction, confusion replaced fear. When a message finally came from Jack Morrison, saying he was alive and had made contact with the Vorax, most council members refused to believe it. Elder Zira called an emergency meeting. Representatives from all major species gathered in the council chamber, their conversations a mix of disbelief and worry. This must be a trap, said the Krell warrior representative. The Vorax have forced the human to send this message to lure us into an ambush. Perhaps, Elder Zira replied. But what if it is true? What if Ambassador Morrison has achieved what we thought impossible? Before anyone could answer, alarms blared throughout the station. The emergency system announced that an unknown vessel was approaching. On the main view screen, a massive Vorax ship appeared, moving steadily toward the council station. They're following the human here, shouted someone. He's led them straight to us. Security teams rushed to their positions. Weapon systems activated automatically. Civilian areas were evacuated. The council chamber fell into chaos as representatives demanded immediate evacuation. Elder Zira raised all four of her arms, calling for order. The Vorax ship is not in attack position, she noted. And look, there's a smaller ship alongside it. She zoomed in on the image. That's Ambassador Morrison's vessel. The comm system crackled to life. Jack's face appeared on the main screen. Galactic Council, this is Ambassador Jack Morrison. I am returning with representatives from the Vorax Collective who wish to open diplomatic relations. Please hold your fire and prepare to receive a delegation. Stunned silence filled the chamber. No one had ever imagined Vorax visitors coming in peace. After heated debate, the council agreed to allow a small landing party. Security was tripled around the docking bay. Every available soldier and defense system was put on alert. When the airlock opened, Jack stepped out first. He was wearing a strange combination of his human uniform and pieces of Vorax decorative armor. Behind him came Olivia, looking both exhausted and amazed, and then, ducking to fit through the human-sized doorway, came Kraz. The massive Vorax straightened to his full height in the docking bay. 3 more Vorax followed him. At the sight of them, several security officers raised their weapons. Hold your fire, Jack called out. They come in peace. Elder Zira approached, flanked by her security team. Ambassador Morrison, you have survived. More than survived, Elder, Jack replied with a smile. I've learned. And now I'd like you to meet Huntmaster Kraz of the 7th Pack of the Vorax Collective. Kraz stepped forward and placed a small purple orb on the ground between them. It hovered and began to glow. Greetings, Elder of the Council, Kraz's voice came through the translator orb. For too long, our species have misunderstood each other. The council chamber was prepared for the unprecedented meeting. Most representatives insisted on attending remotely, their holographic forms flickering around the table. Only Elder Zira and representatives from the warrior Krell had the courage to be physically present. Jack stood between the two groups, acting as both translator and mediator when the orb struggled with complex concepts. For 10,000 years, Kraz explained, we have tested the species of this galaxy looking for those worthy to stand beside us, not as prey, but as equals. You call destroying colonies and murdering innocents testing? Demanded the Krell representative. What you saw as random violence was ritual challenge, Kraz replied. We took far fewer lives than we could have. We left survivors to grow stronger, to learn. In Vorax culture, Jack added, showing strength earns respect. They weren't looking for victims. They were looking for equals. Elder Zira leaned forward. And now? What do you seek from the council? New beginning, Kraz said. Human Jack has shown us different way to find worthy companions. Not through fear, but through understanding. Jack outlined a proposal that had been developed during his time with the Vorax. The attacks on colonies would stop. Instead, the Vorax offered to establish designated challenge zones, planets where their hunting rituals could be performed, with willing participants from other species. Those who wish to test themselves against the Vorax can do so in these zones, Jack explained. Those who prove themselves will earn Vorax respect and alliance. In return, Kraz added, we share knowledge, Vorax technology, Vorax protection. The chamber erupted in discussion. Many representatives remained suspicious, believing this to be an elaborate trick. Others saw opportunity in an alliance with the galaxy's most feared predators. How can we trust them? Asked one representative. After millennia of terror, we should demand reparations, not alliances. The past cannot be changed, Jack replied. But the future can. The Vorax have agreed to stop all uninvited challenges immediately. They're offering their considerable strength to protect Council worlds from external threats. As the debate continued, Jack noticed security officers entering the chamber. They approached Elder Zira and whispered something urgently. Her 4 eyes widened. We have received reports, she announced, that 37 Vorax ships have been detected moving through Council space. Panic spread through the chamber. Representatives accused Kraz of betrayal, claiming this diplomatic mission was just a distraction. Kraz roared for silence. When the room quieted, he spoke through the orb. Not attack force. Answer to Jack's call. Word has spread among all Vorax packs. Many curious about New Way. Many wish to join New Beginning. It's true, Jack confirmed. I sent messages to other Vorax packs inviting them to join this historical moment. They're coming to show support for peace, not to threaten war. Over the next several days, the Council Station became the site of the most unusual diplomatic conference in galactic history. Vorax representatives from different packs arrived, each bringing their own perspectives and questions. Many Council species remained fearful, but curiosity began to overcome terror as they learned more about Vorax culture. Jack worked tirelessly, moving between different groups, explaining cultural differences, and mediating misunderstandings. He organized demonstrations of Vorax hunting techniques, not against living beings, but in controlled simulations that showed their skill and intelligence. In turn, representatives from Council species shared their own cultures. The Araxians performed their 4-armed dance of unity. The Krell demonstrated their stone crafting art. Humans shared music, which particularly fascinated the Vorax. Not everyone supported Jack's diplomatic efforts. A faction formed among Council species who had suffered most from Vorax attacks. They called themselves the Never Forget movement and demanded justice rather than alliance. They destroyed my homeworld, said one representative during a particularly tense session. Killed my family, and now we're supposed to welcome them as friends? Not friends, Kraz corrected through the orb. Respect-worthy rivals, worthy of honor. Jack stepped in. The pain cannot be erased, but continuing the cycle of fear and misunderstanding won't bring back what was lost. We have a chance to build something new. As the conference continued, Jack noticed Olivia had been working closely with a group of Vorax engineers. She approached him during a break, excitement in her eyes. "You need to see this," she said, pulling him toward a secure area where the Vorax had been permitted to demonstrate some of their technology. Inside, Jack found Kraz and several other Vorax gathered around a holographic display showing what looked like advanced ship designs. Kraz has been sharing their propulsion technology, Olivia explained. It's decades ahead of anything in Council space, and their biomechanical interfaces? Revolutionary. "Is this going well?" Jack asked Kraz. The massive Vorax made a gesture that Jack had learned was their equivalent of a smile. "Council begins to see value in alliance. Fear still strong, but curiosity stronger." Elder Zira entered the room, her movement graceful despite her age. "Ambassador Morrison, the Council has voted to establish a trial period for your proposed alliance. 1 standard year to prove this can work." Jack nodded. "It's a start." "The Never Forget faction is still strongly opposed," she warned. "They have many supporters. Be careful." "Change takes time," Jack replied. "But we've already accomplished more than anyone thought possible." As they left the technology demonstration, Jack noticed a group of young council members cautiously approaching a Vorax warrior. Instead of running in fear, they were asking questions, showing curiosity rather than terror. "Look at that," Jack said to Olivia. "The next generation might grow up seeing Vorax as allies instead of monsters. All because you were crazy enough to offer an apple to the galaxy's deadliest predator," Olivia replied with a smile. "Sometimes," Jack said, watching the young ones interact with the Vorax, "the bravest thing isn't fighting or running, it's standing your ground and trying to understand." 6 months into the trial period of the Vorax Council Alliance, tensions remained high but progress was steady. Jack had established a small diplomatic outpost near the border of Vorax space, where representatives from interested council species could meet with Vorax under controlled conditions. Several brave individuals had even participated in modified hunting rituals, earning respect from their former enemies. Jack was reviewing reports in his office when Olivia burst through the door. Her face was pale. "Emergency transmission from the Council," she said, activating the view screen on the wall. Elder Zira's image appeared. The normally composed Araxian looked deeply troubled, all 4 of her eyes blinking rapidly. "Ambassador Morrison, we need the Vorax," she said without greeting. "The Devourers have returned." Jack felt his blood run cold. The Devourers were not a species but a force, a swarm of biomechanical entities from outside the galaxy that appeared every few centuries to consume everything in their path. The last incursion had been nearly 300 years ago, before humans had joined the galactic community. "How bad?" Jack asked. "Worse than ever before," Elder Zira replied. "They've already consumed 3 outer systems. Our defense fleets can't even slow them down." Jack turned to Olivia. "Contact Kraz immediately." Within hours, Jack was aboard Kraz's command ship, heading toward a council military station near the invasion zone. The view screen showed the advancing Devourer swarm, billions of small metallic organisms that joined together to form larger structures as needed, consuming all matter to replicate themselves. Council military ships fought bravely, but were being overwhelmed. Their weapons seemed almost useless against the endless swarm. "Council weapons too gentle," Kraz observed through his translator orb. "Try to kill cleanly. Devourers not care about clean death." Vorax ships arrived from all corners of the galaxy, responding to Kraz's call. Their living vessels moved with a speed and coordination that surprised even the Council military commanders. Instead of traditional weapons, the Vorax ships released what looked like energy predators, artificial life forms that hunted through the Devourer swarm, tearing them apart from within. Jack stood on the command deck of the Council military, stationed with Elder Zira and other high-ranking officials. They watched in awe as the Vorax engaged the enemy with a savage efficiency no Council species had ever witnessed before. "They hunt as one," the Krell commander said with grudging respect. like they share a single mind in battle. Pack mind, Jack explained, using the term Kraz had taught him. When Vorax hunt together, they form a mental connection. It's why they've dominated their territory for so long. But even the Vorax began to struggle as the Devourer swarm adapted to their tactics. For every 1,000 destroyed, 1,000,000 more appeared, learning and evolving with each encounter. The swarm is targeting population centers, reported a council officer. At their current speed, they'll reach the core worlds in 6 days. Jack studied the tactical displays, thinking hard. We're fighting the wrong way, he said suddenly. Both council forces and Vorax are trying to destroy the Devourers directly, but they reproduce too quickly. What alternative? Asked Elder Zira. Jack turned to Kraz. You told me about the great hunt on your homeworld, how your ancestors hunted the apex predators not by attacking them directly, but by driving them into natural traps. Kraz's 4 eyes blinked in understanding. Yes, when prey too strong. For claws, use mind instead. Together they developed a bold plan. Instead of trying to stop the swarm's advance, they would guide it, using carefully calculated attacks to herd the Devourers toward a dying star system that Council scientists had been studying. The massive star was already unstable, close to going supernova. The plan required perfect coordination between Council ships and Vorax hunters, 2 forces that had been enemies for thousands of years. Jack worked with both groups, translating not just language but cultural concepts between them. Council ships provide the wall of force, he explained. Vorax hunters provide the fangs to guide the prey where we want it to go. The Krell commander shook his head. We'd need to position ships behind the swarm. Any vessel caught there would be destroyed once the star explodes. I will lead that force, Kraz volunteered. Vorax ships faster, better chance to escape blast. For 3 days, the combined fleet executed their plan. Council vessels formed barrier formations, while Vorax hunters launched precise strikes to turn the swarm toward the dying star. Communication systems were integrated so the Council ships could participate in the Vorax pack mine during battle, creating an unprecedented level of coordination. Jack remained on the command station, directing the overall strategy. He had wanted to join Kraz on the lead ship, but both the Council and the Vorax had insisted he was too valuable to risk. Swarm entering target system, reported a Council officer. 90% of mass following the intended path. On the main view screen, they watched as the enormous Devourer swarm surrounded the unstable star, drawn by the rich energy emissions. The combined fleet pulled back to a safe distance. Initiate final phase, Jack ordered. Special Council vessels fired gravitic weapons designed to destabilize the already failing star. At the same time, Vorax ships behind the swarm launched their final attack, ensuring no part of the swarm could escape the trap. Vorax rearguard must withdraw immediately, Elder Zira warned. Our sensors indicate the star is collapsing faster than predicted. Rearguard acknowledge, came the response, beginning withdrawal. But the swarm, sensing the trap, turned on the retreating Vorax ships. Several were quickly overwhelmed. The view screen showed Kraz's command vessel fighting off multiple swarm. Concentrations unable to break free. They won't make it, Olivia said, her voice tight. Jack grabbed the communication controls. Kraz, abandon your ship. Use the escape pods. No escape pods on Vorax vessels, Kraz replied, his voice calm through the translator. We hunt together. We die together. Is Vorax way. There has to be another option, Jack insisted, turning to the Council officers. What about emergency teleportation? Range too great, the Krell commander replied, and the radiation is already interfering with systems. On the screen, the star began to collapse. The swarm, now fully surrounding it, tried to flee but was caught in the increasing gravitational pull. Kraz's ship and the other trapped Vorax vessels fought to the last moment, ensuring no portion of the swarm escaped. Then the star exploded. The view screen went white, then dark, as systems overloaded. When emergency backups came online, they showed the aftermath. The Devourer swarm completely destroyed in the supernova, along with the brave Vorax rearguard. Silence fell over the command center. Then, one by one, Council officers stood, at attention, paying respect to the sacrifice of their former enemies. 3 days later, a memorial service was held at the Galactic Council headquarters. Representatives from all member species attended, along with hundreds of Vorax from different packs. They gathered to honor those who had given their lives to save the galaxy. Elder Zira spoke first, officially declaring the trial period over. The alliance between the Council and the Vorax is no longer experimental but permanent, she announced. Together we have faced the greatest threat to our collective existence and prevailed. A new Vorax leader stepped forward, Vorsk, who had once challenged Jack in combat and was now the voice of the Vorax collective. Kraz believed in New Way, Vorsk said through his translator orb. Believed Council species and Vorax stronger together than apart. His final hunt proves this truth. Jack was asked to speak last. He looked out at the gathered beings, species that had been locked in fear and misunderstanding for thousands of years, now standing together in shared grief and hope. Throughout history, Jack said, the greatest barriers between peoples haven't been distance or language or even war. The greatest barrier has always been fear of the unknown. For millennia, the galaxy feared the Vorax because no one tried to understand them. And the Vorax sought worthy companions through methods that only created more fear. He gestured to the assembled representatives. Today, we honor those who gave their lives. But the best way to honor them is to continue what they started, to replace fear with understanding, to see former enemies as potential allies, to stand our ground when faced with the unknown, not to fight it or run from it, but to try to understand it. The memorial concluded with a Vorax hunting song, its deep tones resonating through the council chamber in a way that would have once caused panic, but now brought solemn reflection. Later, Jack stood with Olivia at a viewport, looking out at the stars. A small Vorax ship passed by the station, one of many now freely traveling through Council space on diplomatic or joint military missions. You actually did it, Olivia said. You changed the course of galactic history. Jack shook his head. We all did it. Kraz, you, Elder Zira, everyone who was willing to try something new instead of clinging to old fears. What happens now? Olivia asked. Now comes the hard part, Jack replied. Building something that lasts. The Vorax and Council have centuries of mistrust to overcome, but we've made a start. A group of young diplomats passed by, a mix of various Council species and even 2 young Vorax all engaged in animated conversation. They nodded respectfully to Jack as they passed. Look at them, Jack said with a smile. The next generation won't know a galaxy divided by fear. They'll grow up in a different world than we did. As they watched the stars together, a communication came through on Jack's personal device. It was from a remote Council colony that had been devastated by a Vorax challenge years earlier. The colony had agreed to host a Vorax cultural exchange program, with former victims and former hunters working together to rebuild. It's working, Jack said softly. One step at a time, but it's working. Olivia squeezed his shoulder. All because one stubborn human refused to run from the galaxy's deadliest predator. Sometimes, Jack replied, watching the stars, the most important thing isn't how strong you are or how fast you can flee. Sometimes the most important thing is just being willing to stand your ground and offer an apple.